Today's video is going to be my January reading. Back in December, what was it called? And I have 9 books to talk about. I had to check. Hi everyone, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. Today's video is going to be my January reading rewind, so a look at everything that I read in the month of January, at the risk of stating the obvious, but I read 9 books and I am happy to say that I actually started the year off really strong and read some really good books. There was one dud in there, but I discovered a new author. I totally leveraged my library. I didn't spend a dime on any new books. I stayed spend-free the entire month as I had planned, and I have some good books to talk about. I also participated in Buzzwordathon, which was great, and I did a separate video on that. But let's just get into it. I'm just going to run through them in the order that I read them and talk a little bit about everything. The first book I read is Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan, and yes, I'm 5 years late to the game. I talked about this in another video. I watched the movie over Christmas and was so obsessed with it that we watched it twice in the 48-hour timeline that we could rent it on demand. But I had heard so many great things about the book for so many years. I still wanted to read it, so I was able to get it from my library kind of immediately. And I think I started reading it like on New Year's Day or something like that. But I really enjoyed the book, and what I will say, for anyone who has seen the movie but not read the book, there's so much more to it, and the book is actually quite different in a lot of areas, including the ending. And I think, like, my best guess is when they made the movie, they didn't know if there was going to be a second movie, whereas there's 3 books. So maybe they sort of jammed stuff from book 2 into book 1. Maybe they kind of Hollywoodized it. I don't really know. It doesn't really matter. But there are so many, there's so many more characters in the book, which I will admit was one thing that was hard to follow, but fortunately there's, obviously I don't have it anymore because it's from the library. There's like a whole chart in the front of who's who and how they're related and what their connections are. So that made it easier to follow, although I consistently flipped back to the front of the book. And then I'll be honest, watching the movie was really helpful to me because I was able to picture those actors and those characters in my head, which also helped me kind of tie faces to names and tie some storylines together. But all in, I think it was a great book. It takes a much deeper dive. The stories, especially with Astrid, are so much more fleshed out. There's a lot more going on, and I loved it. So I am absolutely going to pick up, by pick up I mean get from the library or get online, China Rich Girlfriend, which is the second one, because I'm really curious about it. And I did a little bit of reading after the movie and after the book just to kind of see, you know, what people were thinking and just sort of some feedback. And I understand that the second book focuses a ton on Astrid and her story, and Nick and Rachel, who are the main characters in the first one, have, I think, like a little bit of a lesser story, but they're still there. But all in, I thought it was a great book. I'm so happy I finally read it. Couldn't recommend it more. So if you are like me and for no good reason just haven't read Crazy Rich Asians, check it out because I think it's absolutely worth it. The next book I read is The One by John Mars, and this is a book that like literally came out of nowhere and completely rocked my world. So I heard about this book from Lisa at Books and Smiles, and I was watching her 2018 wrap-up videos, and this was in like her best thrillers, and she said that like she picked up this book and stayed up all night to read it because she just couldn't put it down, and literally like texted her friends at like 4 in the morning or something and was like, hey guys, I'm finally going to bed. I have not put this book down since I picked it up. And honestly, like that was enough like just to pique my interest to see what the hell this book was. And I was able to get it online immediately through my library, and this was at night. And just to give you some context, so I was sick. I had already taken the Tylenol cold, so I started to read it that night and only got, I don't know, maybe like 40 pages in or something before like the drugs knocked me out. But the beauty of being sick is I literally spent the whole next day like reading, sleeping, and eating, and I finished the book the next day because she was not wrong. It is that freaking good. So this book, and I've never even heard of John Marrs before. I'd never heard of this book before. This book is takes place in the UK, and it kind of plays on the idea how like dating sites were all the rage, but how it was still hard to meet people and relationships didn't necessarily last or succeed. So there have been scientific breakthroughs where they now can match you on your DNA. So basically what you do is you like take a cheek swab, send it in, and when your DNA match, which science will pair you with, also joins, you will get a letter of who that person is. And this is the person that scientifically you were supposed to be with. It is your true soulmate. You will never know a love like this before. When you meet this person, you will see why nothing else ever made sense. And everyone is striving to be with their DNA match. And this book takes place kind of 10 years after the science has come into play. And you know, what's interesting is that all these people, whether they were married or not, applied for it. So divorce rates went up and all of these things, and sort of sent everything into turmoil and broke up all of these relationships. But on the flip side, you have all these people that are so beyond happy and are knowing love like nothing else, and everyone is striving for it. And this story focuses around 5 people. I forget their names. So it's Jade, Nick, Ellie, Christopher, and Mandy. And it sort of opens for each one of these characters when they each sort of get that letter about their one. And the book is told in alternating chapters. So you get a chapter from each person and then starts back at the beginning. And they are very short, kind of quick, but tons happens in these chapters, kind of chapters that make you compulsively want to find out what's going to happen next. And the thing to know is like, this is not a love story. And all of these people have secrets, and all of these people have layers, and all of these people have so much more going on than you think. And what you find out, not a spoiler because you learn this like 10 pages in, somebody's secret even includes being a serial killer. Oh my God. I can't say enough about this book, and I literally am not going to say anything else because I don't dare say anything. Like, you have to experience it for what it is. When I tell you I compulsively read this book like a psycho, I'm not even kidding. It was so good. I couldn't wait to see what happens next. Lisa absolutely nailed her sale of this book. Like, pick it up and I dare you to put it back down. It's one of those kinds of books. So, second book I read of the year, blew it out of the water. It was incredible. I'm absolutely going to look into more of John Marrs' books. This was not his first, and like, it will not be my last. It's incredible. The next book I read is Real Murders by Charlaine Harris, and this is the first book in the Aurora Teagarden series. So I talked about this for Cloak and Dagger Christmas. I read, I want to say like the 8th book in the series, and I talked about kind of why there, and in my wrap up for December. I have seen the Aurora Teagarden movies on Hallmark Movies and Mysteries, and I enjoy them, and I was looking for a cozy mystery in December for the readathon and decided to pick that one up because it was kind of one of the last movies they made. But when I realized that the book was actually completely different than the movie, I decided to go back to the beginning of the series, and this is a full-on cozy. I kind of wanted it as like a palate cleanser, I guess I would say, and it was that. So it was definitely like an easier read. It was a quick read, and my struggle with this book, and I didn't not like it, but I think seeing the movie in this case worked against me because there were more characters in the book, and I liked the movie version better than the book, which is not to say the book was bad, but now that I've seen an alternate ending and an alternate way of telling the story, I liked that one better. So, you know, I'm still going to continue to pick up the book. I'm curious to kind of read the series, and I think I will continue to take them as sort of palate cleansers after reading a heavier book. And I'm curious to see sort of what the other differences are and how the characters develop and how the stories are told. So I still enjoy the writing. I still enjoy the books. I'm happy to kind of be starting over from the beginning with the series. So On Goodreads, and again, I've talked about this, I don't really star my reviews on here, and I struggle with giving things stars, but I put it as a 3. I would say it was good. It was kind of what I would expect from a cozy, but unlike the other Aurora Teagarden that I read, whereas the movie was totally different and I enjoyed the book version better, in this case, I liked the movie better than the book. So those are the risks you take when you watch the movie before you see the book. But yeah, it was good. The next book I read was Beartown by Frederick Bachman, and I have done a whole separate spoiler-free review video on this book, which I will link above if I can figure out how that works, or down below. And I won't go on too much about it here other than to say, like, I loved this book. The writing in and of itself is by far some of the best writing I have ever read, and so beautifully done. The characters are complicated and complex, and there's no stereotypes, and there's no sort of cookie cutter character. And, you know, I think what makes this book so amazing is the levels and layers that are involved in it. And it is about so many things. From, yes, you've got this ice hockey team, so you have this undercurrent of, you know, teamwork and competition and pressure, and, you know, kind of everything rests on the shoulders of these boys. And it is, you know, Beartown has always kind of come in second with everything, and they finally have a chance to be number 1. And everyone is sort of pushing everything else aside to be the best and to be number 1 and kind of do whatever it takes. But then, of course, something happens in the book that sort of threatens everything and puts the town in turmoil. And, you know, there are triggers to this. There is, you know, to kind of quote from the back of the book, there's a violent act against one of the girls. And it is, you know, how the town responds, how the people respond, how the friends respond, and the impact that it has sort of across the board. Where it becomes so thought-provoking about, you know, what would you do in these circumstances, or how would you react? And, you know, I talked about this in the other video. I think about my 16-year-old self and what I would like to think I would have done, and who I would have sided with, or how I would have acted in certain situations. And I also think about, again, that insecurity and wanting to belong, and, you know, the safeness of sort of siding with the bullies, so you're not the one getting bullied, but you become the bully because it's a safer haven for you. And, you know, I think speaking out against the town, and with the parents as well, it's, you know, no one wants to disrupt this chance at winning. So do you sort of quietly sit by, even though you know it's not the right thing to do, or do you put yourself out on the edge and stand up for things and stir the pot and make a statement, knowing that it could affect your family and your career and the town being against you, and there's repercussions and there's retaliation. So there's a lot of questions about morals and sort of moral compass, and, you know, versions of right and wrong. And it's just, there's so much to it in the best possible way. I cannot wait to read the sequel, Us Against You, which I'm happy at least that it took me so long to read Beartown. The sequel already exists, so I can dive into that, which I'm going to plan to do next month. Small teaser, I'm going to have a video about a special TBR that I'm going to do next month, or February, so by the time you're watching it, it's this month. But if you haven't read Beartown, pick it up, get it from your library, you know, get it online for free, do whatever you need to do. I don't think you will be disappointed. I think this is just a beautiful piece of literature, and a beautiful story, and so timely, and so kind of right now that you can't go wrong. Get it. Just seriously, get it. Bottom line, get it. I'm gonna lump the next 3 books together because I read them for Buzzwordathon, and I did a TBR and an aftermath video for those, which goes into much bigger detail about what I thought about these books. But Buzzwordathon was created by Lala at Books and Lala, and she did it this year with Natasha from My Reading is Odd, and they pick a popular word that shows up in tons of books, and the whole idea is to read books with that word in it. This time around the word was lie, so any version of lie was the buzzword. And I read The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager, and loved Final Girls by Riley Sager, liked The Last Time I Lied. So there were parts I really enjoyed, there were parts that I struggled with. All in, I enjoyed the ending, still committed to him as a writer, totally picking up his next book. So that's that. The second book I read was Let Me Lie by Claire McIntosh. Absolutely loved this book. This is the second book I've read by her. I thought it was really well done. I loved the main characters, Anna and Murray. Murray's the cop, Anna's kind of the girl on the mission trying to figure out what happened to her parents, who both committed suicide 7 months apart, but Anna thinks something is up, and Murray winds up helping her with the investigation. Loved. And then the last book I read was Every Last Lie by Mary Kubica. I didn't actually read it. I listened to it on an audiobook, but I clearly had purchased the book and didn't like it at all. So I don't know if it was the audiobook's fault. I suspect I would have also not liked it, even if I read it, but maybe I would have not liked it less. I don't know. I found the voices on the audiobook to be super annoying, but ultimately there were just a lot of parts of this story that I found frustrating. I hated the ending of it. I have read 2 other books by Mary Kubica, have not given up on her as an author either, so I will read another one. But this one just didn't hit the spot for me. So this was the dud of the month that I mentioned at the beginning. The next book I read is part of my 2019 kind of project reread, which I have established for myself. And it was The Romantics by Gail Niederhofer. And I am happy to say I loved this book as much this time around as I did the first time round. And this is a book that takes place kind of over the course of a wedding weekend, and it reunites 7 friends from college. So they all meet kind of the beginning of freshman year, and the wedding is taking place 10 years later, and 2 of the friends in the group are getting married. But the hitch is the guy used to date the maid of honor. And sort of in typical wedding fashion, and it is, like I said, it's the wedding weekend, so you've got the rehearsal dinner and everyone together. There's tons of drinking. There's tons of old emotions flaring up. There's a lot of past that gets pushed forward, and there's other friends in the group who are married to each other or have, you know, kind of connections to each other, and sort of the whole idea of the romantics, which is what they were dubbed in college because of the friend group's ancestral relationship with one another. So everyone's kind of had a fling or had a night or had a something with each other, long-term or short-term, and that of course breeds all sorts of great drama. So I think this is a great book. I enjoyed the writing. I remember really connecting with it when I first read it, and I think part of that is I had a similar group of friends in college, so I get it, and I get, you know, kind of what happens years afterwards, and when you're back together again, you know, kind of when everyone, you know, moves away and time changes things and you're brought back together, and there's that element of things always being like they used to be, and then there's the element of like, it'll never be like it used to be. So I think it's a great book. I really enjoyed it. There is also a movie of this, which I had mentioned, with Josh Duhamel and Katie Holmes and Anna Paquin, and I haven't had a chance to rewatch it yet, but I'm going to. Obviously, I own it because I'm a crazy person and I need to have it, and I've had it for years. So I'm going to rewatch that too. And the movie was very true to the book, which I also enjoyed. But if you haven't read this one, I highly recommend it. It's short. It's like 250 pages maybe. 260. So it's not a big read, but it's a worthwhile read, and it's another one that's really beautifully written. So super happy that 2019 Project Reread is also off to a good start. The last book I read is The Marriage Pact by Michelle Richmond, and this is a domestic thriller, I would say. I don't know why my voice cracked. And this is about Alice and Jake, who, when the book opens, they're just about to get married. And, you know, we see their wedding and everything. And I really liked this book, but there were some parts that were really difficult to read, which I think is intentional. But I really liked the ending, and I really enjoyed it. But there were some parts that were unsettling, and it's supposed to be unsettling to read. So keeping it vague, because I'm not going to spoil anything. But kind of right before their wedding, they wind up getting a gift from one of Alice's clients. So she's an attorney, young attorney in San Francisco. And it's kind of this cryptic box gift. They don't know what it is. And at the wedding, the guy is kind of like, go on your honeymoon, and when you get back, we'll talk about the gift. And the gift is an invitation to join the pact. And this woman comes to their house and kind of explains it to them. And the whole idea of the pact is it's a group of like-minded individuals who are all about seeing marriages be successful and see them survive, and sort of seeing couples be the best of themselves and the best to each other. And would you like to join? So Alice is kind of a recovered rock star turned attorney, and, you know, she's kind of always looking for something new and always challenging and wide-eyed, and she's recently coming off the fact that, you know, her family, her parents had passed away, her brother had committed suicide. She's very much alone in the world outside of Jake, and she's kind of looking for something to hold on to. And Jake is kind of so scared about her well-being. He's a therapist, and he will do anything to make her happy. So she wants to join the pact. He agrees to do it. They literally sign on the dotted line. They get handed this giant manual, and they don't really think much of it. And off we go. So, not really a spoiler, but if you can't figure it out, the pact is basically a cult, and there's nothing easy breezy about these people. So it's a lot of kind of beautiful on the outside, but if you do anything wrong, which could be something as basic as not buying your spouse a gift like you're supposed to do, or not planning a trip, which you're supposed to take every quarter, to, you know, infidelity, you know, kind of bigger crimes, there are consequences. And it is some serious, deep, dark shit. Like, it's pretty bad. And like to steal a line from Riverdale, it's like full darkness, no stars. So it was a fast book. I was totally engaged in the story. I was fascinated by kind of how crazy this pact was, and these two seemingly normal people who now are kind of just trying to survive and live within the laws and live within the code of the pact. And, you know, nobody gets out of the pact alive. So they kind of want out. You can't get out. You kind of have to come to terms with it and make your peace with it. But it is not without a lot of stuff. So there are parts that are super dark. It is, again, really thought-provoking. And, you know, it just sort of makes you think about marriage and what you would do, and, you know, what would make people want to be a part of something like this. And if you couldn't get out, what would you do to survive? And the things you will do for your spouse, and the sacrifices you will make, and who you can trust and who you can't. And the idea of, you know, sort of people watching you and keeping tabs on you and your seemingly extremely normal life. And you make this innocent decision to be like, yeah, like, let's be a part of that club. That sounds kind of cool, to being so dark, deep, down a hole, with sort of no hope of ever knowing what that life was that you had before. So it's a lot, but it's really good. I really enjoyed it. It was, like I said, it was really quick. There's a lot of really short chapters, so you just keep moving on along. This is the first book I've ever read by her. I kind of stumbled upon it, you know, when I was doing a book outlet haul a while ago, and I'm glad I got it. I'm glad I read it. It's a lot. It's one that makes you think. It's one that definitely stays with you for a bit. So I would recommend it. I think it's a good thriller, and I'm, again, super happy I read it and happy to have ended the month on a high note. So that does it for January. So all in, great month, lots of good books, super excited about the one by John Mars, super excited about Beartown by Frederick Bachman. Two completely different books, but hands down 5-star reads, couldn't recommend them enough. So if you're looking for a thriller, read the one. If you're looking to have your world sort of changed in all the best ways, and both of these books are so thought-provoking. Changed is Beartown, but such thought-provoking books definitely stay with you long after you're done reading them. Just such a great month. So excited about this month. So I would love to know if you guys have read any of these books, what you did read, what you would recommend from your list of what I should read, but let me know all of that great stuff down below. And thank you guys, as always, for spending some of your day with me and hanging out a bit to chat books. And I will see you back here really soon. Bye, everybody.